Ladies and gentlemen, today, we're stepping into a topic that is often whispered about, joked about, celebrated on social media, and yet rarely spoken of with honesty. Casual sex, what it gives, what it takes, and most importantly, what it quietly does to your heart. This is not a speech about morality or judgment. This is a speech about human nature, emotional truth, and the cost of pretending we are immune to the things that were designed to shape us. The idea that casual sex can happen with no strings attached is one of the most common messages promoted in modern culture. Yet it is one of the most misleading. People repeat this phrase as if saying it makes it true, but beneath the surface, beneath the bravado, beneath the social pressure to appear detached and unbothered, human beings are still emotional, relational, and deeply responsive creatures. We can label the experience as casual, brief, or meaningless, but those labels do not change what happens internally. They only change what we are willing to admit. Many people enter casual encounters with the intention of keeping things simple. They convince themselves that they can enjoy intimacy without attachment, connection without commitment, closeness without vulnerability, and in theory, that sounds liberating, but those promises often fall apart the moment the reality of human nature steps in. We are not built like machines that can turn connection on and off at will. Emotional bonds form through shared vulnerability, physical closeness, trust, and the release of bonding hormones. So when someone tries to participate in intimacy while trying to ignore its emotional impact, they end up in an internal conflict. The desire to feel nothing versus the human tendency to feel something. This is why so many people who claim they want no strings later find themselves confused by unexpected emotions. They feel jealous of someone who was never theirs to begin with. They feel hurt when the other person pulls away, even though they agreed to keep it casual. They feel a lingering attachment that doesn't match the relationship's label. These aren't signs of weakness. They are signs of being human. The heart does not obey the rules we try to impose on it when those rules contradict its natural design. Calling something casual also gives many people permission to ignore the emotional consequences. It becomes an excuse to avoid deeper conversations, to skip clarity, to avoid responsibility for each other's feelings. But the absence of labels does not mean the absence of impact. Whether people admit it or not, intimacy creates impressions, expectations, and emotional shifts. And when those emotions are denied or suppressed, they don't disappear, they accumulate. Over time, the pattern of forming and breaking temporary bonds can leave someone feeling disconnected from themselves, unsure of what they want, or less capable of forming meaningful relationships. The truth is simple. No strings attached sounds empowering, but for most people, it asks the heart to do something it was never designed to do. During intimate encounters, people often underestimate the powerful biological processes happening beneath the surface. Even if someone mentally labels the experience as casual or temporary, the body does not treat it lightly. Physical intimacy activates a complex system of hormones and neurological responses that are deeply tied to bonding, trust, and emotional closeness. These reactions happen automatically, without permission from your intentions, preferences, or relationship labels. They are built into human biology because intimacy historically served as a signal of connection, safety, and long-term partnership. Oxytocin, for example, is often called the bonding hormone. It is released during touch, closeness, and physical connection, and it plays a major role in forming emotional attachments. Even in a brief encounter, the body releases oxytocin in ways that strengthen trust and create a sense of connection. This can leave one or both people feeling more emotionally attached than they expected. It is not about weakness, it is about chemistry. Similarly, dopamine floods the brain during pleasurable moments, reinforcing desire, excitement, and craving. The brain begins to associate that person with reward, even if the relationship is purely physical. Over time, this can create emotional confusion, The brain keeps pulling someone toward a person who is never meant to be anything beyond temporary. Another hormone, vasopressin, plays a significant role in bonding, particularly in men. It supports loyalty, attachment, and protectiveness. When this hormone is triggered, a person may feel a stronger emotional tie than they consciously intended. These chemical processes do not ask whether the situation is casual. They simply respond to the intimacy involved, creating connections that go beyond logic or intention. Because of this, people who believe they can emotionally disconnect from their partners often find themselves affected without understanding why. They might feel lingering attachment, unexpected jealousy, or a sense of longing after the encounter ends. They may struggle to get the other person off their mind, or feel strangely vulnerable after the experience. Even individuals who try to stay emotionally detached may notice that casual intimacy gradually chips away at their capacity to remain unaffected. The brain's reward system and its bonding circuitry are activated regardless of what the relationship is called. These natural reactions remind us that intimacy is not just a physical act. It's an emotional and biological event. When people try to force their bodies to act against their innate design, confusion and emotional conflict often follow. The body remembers what the mind tries to dismiss. Over time, casual sex can create a subtle emotional debt that many people don't recognize until the weight of it becomes impossible to ignore. At first, it often feels exciting, validating, or freeing. The thrill of being wanted, the rush of a new connection, and the comfort of physical closeness offer a temporary escape from loneliness or stress. But when the emotional dust settles, what remains is often a quiet emptiness that grows with each encounter. It doesn't always hit immediately. Sometimes it appears slowly, in moments of silence, when the distraction wears off and the feelings that were pushed aside return stronger than before. This emotional debt forms because each encounter makes a small withdrawal from a person's sense of self-worth, clarity, or stability, especially when the connection lacks genuine care or commitment. When someone repeatedly gives their intimacy to people who do not stay, do not invest, or do not truly see them, it becomes harder to maintain emotional resilience. Instead of nourishing the heart, these experiences can drain it. They can leave a person feeling more alone than before the encounter, even if the moment itself felt good. The contradiction between the temporary high and the long-term emptiness can create internal confusion. Why did something that felt so good leave me feeling so unfulfilled? Repeated casual encounters also blur emotional boundaries. Each time someone becomes close to a person who ultimately walks away, the heart learns something, that emotional connections are short-lived, fragile, or unreliable. And this lesson doesn't stay confined to casual relationships. It often follows people into future, more serious relationships. They may struggle to trust healthy partners, fear vulnerability, or expect abandonment. Without realizing it, their past experiences have conditioned them to anticipate emotional instability. The heart, tired and guarded, becomes harder to open. Another part of this emotional debt comes from feeling replaceable. Casual situations by nature imply that either person can be swapped for someone else without consequence. This can deeply impact self-esteem. Even if someone pretends it doesn't matter, a quiet question begins to surface. Am I valued or just convenient? When this question goes unanswered, when validation comes only from momentary desire rather than lasting care, the sense of worth can become tied to attention rather than genuine connection. Over weeks, months, or years, these unprocessed emotions accumulate. What once felt empowering may start to feel draining. What once felt exciting may start to feel hollow. And the heart, burdened by too many unacknowledged losses, may struggle to recognize what true intimacy is supposed to feel like. This is the emotional debt that casual sex often leaves behind, subtle, invisible, but undeniably real. In today's world, intimacy is more accessible than at any other time in human history. With a few taps on a screen, someone can find company, attention, and physical closeness almost instantly. The illusion this creates is that connection is abundant and effortless. Yet, despite this unprecedented access, many people report feeling lonelier, more emotionally disconnected, and more uncertain about love than ever before. This paradox reveals something important. Physical proximity is not the same as emotional intimacy, and temporary closeness cannot replace the deep sense of being known, valued, and cared for. Casual encounters often promise relief from loneliness, but what they deliver is usually only a brief distraction. The moments leading up to the encounter may feel exciting, and the experience itself may bring comfort or validation, but afterward, many people return to the same emotional emptiness they felt before, sometimes even deeper. This happens because when the intimacy ends abruptly, the contrast becomes sharper. The silence after someone leaves can feel louder, the emptiness more noticeable, and the longing more intense. What was meant to soothe loneliness ends up highlighting it. Another factor contributing to this modern loneliness is the way casual interactions shape expectations. When intimacy becomes quick, transactional, or emotionally distant, people begin to view connection as something shallow or fleeting. It becomes normal to assume that others won't stay, won't care, or won't invest emotionally. And once someone internalizes these expectations, they may stop seeking deeper relationships altogether, not because they don't want them, but because they no longer believe such relationships are realistic or attainable. Loneliness grows not only from being physically alone, but from losing faith in the possibility of true emotional closeness. There is also a social pressure to appear unbothered, independent, and indifferent. Admitting loneliness feels like a weakness in a culture that celebrates emotional detachment. So instead of acknowledging the need for connection, many people pretend they don't care, bury their vulnerability, and keep moving from one temporary encounter to another. But suppressed emotions don't disappear. They accumulate quietly, creating a persistent feeling that something is missing, even if everything looks fine on the surface. Ultimately, loneliness in the age of unlimited access comes from confusing availability with fulfillment. Just because intimacy is easier to find does not mean it is easier to feel. The heart still longs for depth, reciprocity, and meaning, things that can't be supplied by convenience or momentary closeness. In the end, the heart simply asks for what it has always needed: genuine connection, honest affection, and intimacy that nourishes rather than empties. No matter how modern or fast-paced the world becomes, our emotional wiring remains rooted in depth, trust, and meaning. Casual encounters may offer temporary comfort, but true fulfillment comes from relationships that honor our vulnerability and give our hearts a safe place to rest. When we choose connection that aligns with our emotional needs, we give ourselves the chance not only to be close to someone, but to truly belong.